Rohan lived on the open plains of Dalan 4, a peaceful colony world far from the main human worlds. His ranch stretched for miles under a bright orange sky. The land was full of soft grass and slow-moving animals that grazed quietly near the stream. It was a calm, simple life. Rohan loved his work, his soil, and the sound of the wind that crossed the hills every evening. He had built everything on this land with his own hands. His home was small but strong, made from local stone. He had solar panels on the roof and water pumps near the fields. Every day he fixed fences, checked the animals, and watched the two suns rise together. He did not need much. His world was peaceful, honest, and free. That peace ended one morning when the first machines came. At first, Rohan thought it was a mistake. He saw bright lights and heavy noise in the distance and dust rising like smoke. He took his old rover and drove across the grasslands to see what was happening. As he got closer, he saw large digger machines with shining white plates marked HOA, Human Order Authority. The HOA was powerful. Everyone in the colony knew that name. They controlled transport, energy, trade, and laws. They were supposed to protect the colonies, but most people knew they only protected their own interests. Rohan parked near the workers and asked, "What are you doing on my land?" A tall officer in a white suit came forward. He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that did not reach his eyes. "We are building a plasma pipeline for the colony's benefit," the officer said. "It will pass through here and connect to the main energy grid." Rohan frowned. "You didn't ask me. This is private land. You can't just dig it up." The officer spoke softly as if Rohan were a child. "The authority owns all energy resources on Dalan 4. We have full permission from the Planetary Council." "That council sits 2 continents away," Rohan said. "They've never stepped on this soil." The officer gave a polite nod and turned away. "Construction will continue. Thank you for your cooperation." Rohan stood there in the dust, watching as the machines tore through the grass, breaking the earth open. The smell of hot metal filled the air. Drones hovered above, scanning and recording. He felt anger, not because of the machines, but because of the silence with which they ignored him, as if he did not exist. That evening, Rohan sat on his porch and watched the lights from the worksite glow in the distance. The sound of engines and drills carried through the night. He could feel the vibrations under his feet. His animals were restless. The air no longer smelled like fresh soil. It smelled like burning metal. He went inside and poured a cup of water, looking at the old photograph on his wall. It was his father, standing in the same field, smiling proudly. His father used to say, "The land only listens to those who respect it." Rohan sighed. The land was now being cut open by people who did not even look at it. Days turned into weeks. The pipeline grew like a silver snake, moving straight through his fields. The HOA workers fenced off parts of his property and placed warning signs that said, "Authorized access only." Rohan tried to complain to the local office. They told him they were reviewing his case. Then they stopped answering. When he went there in person, the guards blocked the door and told him to go home. He went home, but he did not forget. One morning, Rohan woke up and found that the pipeline had reached the stream where his animals drank. The machines had built a crossing over it. The stream was muddy now, and the water pumps no longer worked right. He tried to speak to one of the engineers, but they just shook their heads. "We have orders," they said. "You'll be compensated." "Compensation," Rohan muttered as he looked at the ruined ground. "They think money can replace respect." That night he sat outside again, looking at the stars. Dalan 4 had a wide sky, and the stars looked close enough to touch. He had always loved how peaceful it was, but now even the sky looked smaller, covered by the floating drones of the HOA. He started keeping notes, every movement, every drone flight, every new section of the pipe. He wrote everything down in a small notebook. He knew one thing: the pipeline was not just for local power. It was too large, too strong. It was something bigger. One evening, a small rover stopped at his gate. It was his neighbor, Mira. She stepped out, her face covered with dust from her own damaged land. "They built through my wells," she said angrily. "My water's gone brown. The HOA says it's safe, but I don't trust them." Rohan nodded. "They're not just building for energy. They're building control lines. Once they finish, they'll control every light, every pump, every home." Mira looked at the glowing line of pipes in the distance. You think we can stop them? Rohan smiled faintly. They may have machines, but we have the land. It listens to us. They talked long into the night, planning quietly. Mira had once been an engineer before the HOA cut her job. She knew how to read old blueprints. Rohan knew every corner of the land. Together they began to understand what the HOA was really building. When Mira left, Rohan stood alone under the stars. The hum of the pipeline came from deep underground, like a heartbeat that was not his own. He placed his hand on the soil and closed his eyes. The ground was warm, too warm. He whispered, "You built it through my ranch. But you forgot something. I still own the ground under your feet." The next morning, HOA officers came again. They installed more drones, more fences. They warned Rohan to stay clear of restricted zones. He pretended to listen, but inside his mind, a quiet plan was forming. He fixed his fences, cleaned his tools, and moved his animals to the far side of the property, away from the construction. To anyone watching, he looked like a tired rancher giving up. But in truth, he was studying. He watched where the energy conduits ran, where the control boxes were buried, and where the power valves glowed faintly at night. The pipeline became louder every day. The earth trembled with the movement of plasma energy. The HOA called it progress. Rohan called it arrogance. One afternoon, as he repaired a fence, a young HOA worker approached him. The boy looked nervous. "Sir," he said quietly, "I shouldn't be saying this, but the authority is using your land to test something new. They're not telling the colony what it is. You didn't hear it from me." Rohan looked at him. "Why are you telling me?" The worker shrugged. "Because it's wrong. They shouldn't build without asking the people who live here." He glanced around nervously and left quickly. That night, Rohan could not sleep. The sound of the pipeline pulsed through the ground like thunder. He went outside and stood in the dark, watching the long silver line vanish into the horizon. The HOA lights blinked far away, small but endless. He whispered to himself, "You took my peace. You took my land, but I can still take back what's mine." He turned and walked toward his shed. Inside were old mining tools, old digger bots, and maps of underground soil routes. The machines were dusty, but they still worked. Rohan smiled quietly. The HOA might have power, but he had patience, and he had time. He closed the shed door gently and looked once more at the horizon glowing with the HOA lights. A silent promise formed in his heart. They built their line through my land. Someday soon I will shut it down myself. The sun rose slowly over Dayland 4, painting the fields in shades of gold and red. The wind carried a low hum from the new pipeline that now ran like a silver vein across the land. Rohan stood by the fence, watching his once peaceful ranch become a shadow of its old self. He had tried to reason with the HOA officers, but they never listened. They said their machines were for the progress of all humanity, yet the more they built, the less free people seemed to be. The HOA's machines ran day and night, and their workers rarely spoke to anyone. Still, Rohan watched and learned. He noticed where the power lines met the ground, where the pipeline bent slightly, and where the drones changed patrol routes. He had lived on this land for years. He understood its rhythm. Now he was learning the rhythm of the machines too. A week after his talk with the young worker, Mira came back to his ranch. She was wearing a dusty brown jacket and carried a small pack of tools. "They're expanding," she said without greeting. "They started digging near the ridge behind my wells." "They're moving fast," Rohan nodded. "I noticed. They're connecting new lines. It's not just an energy pipe anymore. They're building something bigger." Mira looked tired but determined. "I found some data files in the public archive. The HOA calls it the Central Plasma Route. It's supposed to connect all the colony sectors. But there's something strange. There are control valves hidden underground. Every 50 miles, one valve. Each one can stop the energy flow completely." Rohan's eyes narrowed. "Valves?" "Yes," she said. "Manual encoded control. Only their officers have access. But if someone could reach one valve and close it, even one, the entire section would go dark." Rohan walked slowly toward the edge of the field, where the soil still showed deep scars from the machines. "You think we can find one?" Mira smiled faintly. "With your knowledge of the land and my old engineering skills, maybe we can." They started working together in secret. Every evening after sunset, When the drones returned to base for charging, they met near the old storage shed behind Rohan's house. They brought maps, sensors, and scraps of old tech. Rohan dug with small tools, careful not to leave marks the HOA drones could detect. Mira used an old scanner to locate the plasma lines underground. They marked the spots with tiny flags made from grass and wire. Days passed, and soon they found something. A round metal plate hidden under the soil, glowing faintly blue. It had numbers etched on its side. Valve 4, Section West Dalen 4. Mira knelt and brushed the dirt away. "We found it," she whispered. Rohan looked at the plate. "So this is where their lifeblood flows." The plate was sealed with strong bolts, and a small control panel blinked beside it. Mira touched the panel carefully. "Coded lock. I'll need time to read it, but if I can't break it, maybe we can turn it by hand." Rohan smiled. "That's good. Machines can be fooled, but metal still listens to strong hands." They covered the valve again and left quietly. The next morning, HOA patrol drones flew lower than usual. Something had alerted them. The officers checked the pipeline and took readings from the ground. Rohan pretended to be busy fixing a fence nearby, acting as if he knew nothing. An officer approached him. "Mr. Rohan, we've had some irregular energy readings in this area. Did you see anything unusual?" Rohan wiped his hands on his shirt and shook his head. "Just my animals grazing. Maybe they're confusing your sensors." The officer frowned, scanned the ground, then left. When the drones were gone, Rohan looked toward the ridge where the valve was hidden. His jaw tightened. "They're watching more closely now," he said to himself. That evening, Mira came again, bringing an old mining bot she had reprogrammed. It was small, round, and silent. "This bot can dig tunnels without showing surface marks," she said. "If we can reach the main valve chamber from below, we can stay out of sight." Rohan nodded. "Let's start from the old well. The ground there is soft." For the next few nights, they worked in darkness, using only red lamps to hide their light. The mining bot moved slowly but surely, cutting a narrow path under the earth. Rohan followed behind, shoveling quietly, listening to the deep hum of the pipeline above. It was hard work, but he didn't mind. Every shovel of soil was a step toward freedom. Every sound of metal against stone reminded him that the land still spoke, and it was speaking to him. During the day, Rohan acted like nothing was happening. He fed his animals, fixed fences, and even waved politely at HOA patrols. The officers thought he had accepted defeat. That was exactly what he wanted them to think. Mira brought him food and tools. They talked softly about old times, about when the colony was still free and open, when humans built things with purpose instead of fear. One night, while they rested near the tunnel entrance, Mira said, "Do you ever think the HOA started with good intentions?" Rohan poked the fire gently. "Maybe, but power changes people. Once they have control, they stop listening. They stop seeing," Mira nodded. "Then we'll make them see again." It took 2 more nights before the tunnel reached the underside of the valve chamber. The mining bot's sensors detected the metal floor above them. Mira smiled in relief. "We're close. Just a few more meters." Suddenly, the tunnel lights flickered. Rohan looked up sharply. "Power surge?" Mira checked her scanner. "No, it's the pipeline. They're increasing flow. Maybe they're testing something." The ground vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling of the tunnel. Rohan steadied himself and listened. The hum of the pipeline was louder now, like a heartbeat racing above them. Mira frowned. If they push more power through, the valves might overheat. That could cause explosions along the route. Rohan's expression hardened. Then they're not only stealing the land, they're risking it. He climbed back through the tunnel, emerging near the field. The air smelled of hot metal again. The HOA machines glowed brighter and their engines roared. He saw the officers shouting commands near their control panels. He didn't go closer. Not yet. He watched quietly, memorizing everything. When he returned underground, Mira had her tablet open. "Rohan, I think I can break the valve's access code, but I'll need to connect directly to its control node." He nodded. "Do it, but be careful. We don't want them to trace it." They worked through the night, connecting wires, scanning signals, and mapping the inner system. Slowly, Mira's tablet began to show lines of code, the hidden design of the HOA's pipeline. Her eyes widened. "Look at this. The valve doesn't just control plasma flow. It connects to a central relay that monitors the whole colony's energy grid. They can control weather, lighting, even life support systems from here." Rohan was silent for a moment. "They said it was for power. But it's for control. Mira nodded grimly. Yes, they're turning every ranch, every farm, every home into part of their system. Rohan clenched his fist. Then this is not just about my land anymore. He looked at the valve chamber above, the glowing lines of power running through it. If they can control the colony through this, we can also free it through this. Mira smiled faintly. You mean shut it down? Rohan looked at her with calm eyes. Yes, not destroy it. Just remind them who still owns the ground. That night, before they left the tunnel, Rohan placed his hand on the cool metal of the valve. He could feel the pulse of energy flowing through it, the power that the HOA believed was theirs alone. He whispered softly, "The land remembers. And soon, so will they." As they climbed out of the tunnel, the first light of dawn spread over the plains. The machine still hummed, the drone still circled, and the HOA still believed their control was unbreakable. But beneath their feet in the quiet earth, two humans had already begun the first step of resistance, one that would soon shake the whole colony. The next few days were quiet, but Rohan knew it was only the calm before the storm. The HOA machines slowed their digging for a short time, but he noticed more drones flying above his land. They were watching closer now. Every time he stepped outside, a red light blinked in the distance. Still, he did not stop his work. He kept caring for his animals, fixing his fences and pretending to live a normal life. But under the ground, a different story was growing. The secret tunnel that he and Mira had built now stretched far, almost touching the valve chamber. One afternoon, Mira arrived with a small smile on her face. "I think I have good news," she said, holding her tablet. "I managed to decode part of the HOA system. The valves use an old structure of control commands. If we reach the main relay, we can shut the entire section down manually." Rohan looked at her tablet, filled with strange lines and codes. "You're saying we can stop their whole system with one valve?" "Exactly," Mira said. "But it won't be easy. The main relay is deeper than we thought. It's hidden under the command tower they built near the edge of your land." Rohan frowned. "That's close to the new fence," Mira nodded. "Yes, they added guards and sensors too. But I found a pattern. Every night at 01, the drones move in a circle for charging. That gives us 15 minutes of clear air." Rohan looked toward the horizon where the HOA's bright tower glowed in the dark. 15 minutes might be enough," he said quietly. "We just have to be careful." They decided to act the next night. Until then, they prepared everything. Mira checked her tools and power units while Rohan prepared his old rover and packed basic gear. He also placed a few metal sheets over the tunnel's entrance to hide it completely from thermal scans. When night came, the sky was cloudy and no stars were visible. It was the kind of darkness that made movement easier. Mira arrived with her hood pulled low, her small tablet blinking faintly in her hand. "Ready?" she whispered. Rohan nodded. "Let's remind them who owns this land." They entered the tunnel and followed its narrow path. The air was dry and warm. The hum of the pipeline above them was steady, like the deep breath of a giant creature sleeping under the earth. After crawling for some distance, they reached the valve chamber. Mira brushed the dirt away from the control panel and connected her tablet. The blue light reflected softly on her face. "Give me a few minutes," she said. "I'll unlock the access." Rohan knelt beside her, watching the small screen fill with symbols. He admired her focus. Her fingers moved fast and her eyes were sharp, reading patterns of energy and code like a language of her own. Suddenly, the tablet made a short beep. Mira's face changed. "Rohan, look at this." On the screen was a list of coordinates and labels, not only the energy routes but also hidden connection points across Dalen the 4. "This pipeline isn't just for plasma flow," she said slowly. "It's connected to something called the central weather grid." Rohan frowned. "Weather grid?" Mira nodded. "Yes, it can control temperature, rainfall, and wind over the colony. The HOA built it to control not only power but also the environment. They can change the weather whenever they want." Rohan stared at the screen. "You mean they could make drought or storm on purpose?" "Yes," Mira said. "And they already did. Remember last season when your northern field dried early? That wasn't natural. It was the HOA testing this system." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of energy pulsing through the pipe filled the silence. Rohan finally said, "So that's why they didn't ask permission. They never cared about energy. They wanted control, and of the sky, the land, everything. Mira nodded. Now we know what we're fighting for. They stayed underground until midnight, reading the data and mapping the network. Mira discovered that all control lines ended at one main point, the central relay node, located directly under the command tower at the edge of Rohan's land. If that relay was shut down, the entire HOA grid on Dalen 4 would stop. Rohan touched the wall gently. So the heart of their power beats right under my soil. Mira looked up from her tablet. Yes, and we're close enough to reach it. The next day, Rohan acted normal again. He fixed the barn's roof, greeted the HOA patrols politely, and even let one officer check his water pumps. The officer looked around suspiciously but found nothing unusual. When the officer left, Rohan watched him go and whispered, "Keep looking above ground. The truth is beneath your feet." That evening, he met Mira again near the ridge. They had decided to explore the lower tunnel, hoping to find a path that connected directly to the command tower's base. Using Mira's scanner, they followed faint readings of energy until they reached a narrow corridor of metal pipes. The air was hot and smelled of ozone. The floor vibrated slightly under their boots. Mira whispered, "This is part of the main energy flow. The relay should be near." They moved carefully, using only small lights. Rohan's old mining bot rolled ahead, scanning for traps or sensors. It beeped softly once and there was movement ahead. They froze. Two HOA workers were inspecting the pipes, talking in low voices. "I told you the readings are unstable," one said, "but the officers don't care. They keep increasing flow without fixing the base." "Yeah," the other replied. "I heard the rancher here caused trouble before. They think he might be planning something." Rohan and Mira stayed silent in the shadows, waiting until the workers left. When the footsteps faded, they continued. After some minutes, the tunnel opened into a large metal chamber. At its center stood a glowing cylinder, the main relay node. The air shimmered around it, humming with quiet energy. Mira stared in awe. "This is it. The control center." Rohan looked at it carefully. "Can we stop it?" "Yes, but we'll need to unlock it from the main port," she said, pointing at a console near the wall. "Once we connect, we'll have access to every valve, every weather command, every pipeline sector." They began working quickly. Mira linked her tablet to the console while Rohan checked for alarms or motion sensors. He could feel the heat from the relay even from a distance. As Mira worked, she spoke softly. "If we do this, the HOA will notice immediately. The system will send warnings to all control towers." Rohan replied calmly, "Let them notice. Sometimes they need to see what happens when they push too far." After a few tense minutes, Mira said, "I have access. Look." On her screen appeared a map of the entire colony. Tiny glowing lines connected every town, farm, and outpost. It was like seeing the veins of Dalen for itself. Mira scrolled through the commands. "We can stop the flow here," she said, pointing to a large icon labeled Valve Master Control, Dalen 4 West. Rohan placed his hand on her shoulder. "Not yet. We need to prepare. If we shut it down now, they'll trace it here. We must cover our trail," Mira nodded. "Then tomorrow night. We'll finish this tomorrow." They packed up their tools and quietly made their way back through the tunnel. When they reached the surface, the first rays of dawn were rising again. The sky was clear, calm, and wide, but Rohan knew that the calm was only temporary. As they walked back toward the ranch, Mira said softly, "When we close the valve, the whole colony will feel it." Rohan looked at the land around him, the hills, the streams, the grazing animals that had once been free from machines. "Good," he said. "It's time they remember that this world belongs to its people, not to a council sitting in a tower." The wind carried his words across the plain. The drones flew above, unaware of the quiet plan forming below them. Rohan's eyes were steady. He was not afraid. He was only waiting for the night when the land would take back its silence. Rohan stood by the dry creek bed and watched the faint shimmer of morning light on the metal pipes. The wind carried a smell of dust and steel, and the faint hum of distant pumps. He had shut the main valves 3 days ago, but the silence that followed felt heavy. The land looked peaceful again, but he knew the real storm had just begun. The HOA board had sent him 3 more warnings. They called him stubborn, selfish, and a threat to the community. But Rohan didn't care about their words anymore. His father had always told him, if someone takes your land, they take your roots. He wasn't ready to lose the soil his family had cared for over 3 generations. Lena came walking toward him from the barn, carrying a mug of tea. "You didn't sleep again," she said softly. "You keep standing out here every night." Rohan took the cup and nodded. "Can't sleep when they're planning something. I can feel it." "They won't stop," Lena said, worry showing in her eyes. "They think this pipeline is more important than anything else." "Then they'll learn," Rohan replied calmly. This land was never theirs to control. By noon, Rohan saw dust rising from the road again, a black truck with a white logo on its side, HOA Enforcement Division. This time 3 men stepped out wearing neat shirts and badges. Behind them a drone hovered quietly, recording everything. The man in front, a tall, serious-looking one, called out, "Mr. Rohan, we are here on official business. You are interfering with community infrastructure." Rohan crossed his arms. "Your pipeline runs through my land without my full consent. I have the right to shut it." "Not anymore," the man said. "The HOA voted to claim emergency control. You can either reopen the valves or face legal action." Rohan gave a small smile. "You can try your laws, but they don't water my crops." The man frowned. "We'll be back," he said, motioning to the others. The drone followed them as they left, but Rohan knew it wasn't over. That night the wind carried more than dust. It carried unease. At dusk, Rohan went to check the main pump house again. It stood on the far edge of his ranch near the old windmill. The heavy metal door was locked, but someone had scratched the paint, signs of tampering. He stepped closer and saw small boot marks in the dirt. They had tried to open it. Lena joined him a few minutes later. "You were right," she whispered. "They came again." He nodded slowly. "They won't stop till they get what they want." That night he set up cameras around the ranch and powered his old generator to keep them running. He slept lightly, waking at every strange noise. But around midnight a sharp metallic sound made him jump up. Through the window he saw flashlights moving near the fence line. He ran outside quietly, keeping low, and reached the barn. Through the dark, he saw 2 men trying to cut open the pump house door. Rohan's heart pounded. He picked up his flashlight and turned it on suddenly, pointing the beam at them. "Step away from that valve," he shouted. The men froze. One of them cursed under his breath and ran toward the truck. The other dropped his tool and followed. Rohan chased them halfway down the dirt road before stopping. He didn't want to fight. He wanted them to know he was not afraid. When he came back, Lena was waiting by the gate. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," Rohan said, breathing hard. "But they're getting desperate." "They'll come with more people next time," she said worriedly. "Maybe you should let the lawyer handle it." Rohan looked at her. "If I let them take this land now, what will be left for us? For anyone who still believes land has meaning?" Lena couldn't answer. She only nodded and held his arm. The stars above them were bright and clear, as if the night itself was watching. The next morning, the local news van arrived. A reporter named Mira stepped out holding a mic. "Mr. Rohan, I've heard you shut down the HOA's new water system. Can I ask why?" Rohan hesitated, but then said, "Because they crossed the line. They built through private property without care for what it means to the people who live here." Mira smiled slightly. "You've made a lot of people curious. Some call you a hero, others call you reckless," Rohan chuckled. "Maybe both. But I'm just a man protecting what's his." The interview went live that evening. Within hours, social media was full of messages, some supporting him, others demanding action against him. The HOA board released a statement calling him a danger to community welfare. But that only made more people ask questions. Soon, other ranchers came forward, sharing how the HOA had forced them to. A quiet rebellion began to grow. 3 days later, the HOA returned, this time with police cars and engineers. Rohan stood at his gate as the vehicles stopped. The tall officer from before approached him again. "Mr. Rohan, under new order, we are here to restore water flow. Please move aside." Rohan didn't move. "You'll have to go through me," the officer sighed. "Don't make this harder. We can do this peacefully." Rohan looked at the land around him, the golden fields, the windmill turning slowly, the barn where his father once worked. "This land has given us everything," he said. "I won't let machines take its soul." The officer gave a nod to his men. They began to move forward with tools and cutting gear. Rohan stood still, thinking fast. He knew he couldn't stop them by force, but he could make it harder for them. He took out his phone and began streaming live to his followers. "Everyone watching," he said into the camera. "They're here again. trying to take what's ours. This is not just about me. This is about every farmer, every worker, every home that stands on honest ground. Thousands began watching in minutes. Comments poured in. Stay strong. We're with you, Rohan. Don't let them win. The officers paused, seeing the cameras. The HOA men hesitated. One whispered, we can't be seen forcing him. This could go viral. The lead officer frowned and motioned for everyone to stop. We'll return with a court order, he said coldly. Then they left, the sound of their engines fading down the road. Lena ran out to him. You did it, she said, smiling. You stopped them again. For now, Rohan said softly, looking at the horizon. But the real battle is coming. They'll bring the law next time. And as the sun sank behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and red, Rohan stood tall, ready for whatever came next. Because some fights were worth every risk. Rohan woke up before dawn. The morning air was cool and the sky was painted in soft colors of gray and orange. He stood on his porch holding a mug of tea, watching the quiet land stretch out before him. The grass shimmered with dew and the windmill turned slowly. Everything looked peaceful, but Rohan's heart felt heavy. He knew today was the day. For the last 2 weeks, things had grown tense. The HOA had filed a legal case against him. The local court had sent an order saying the water must be restored to ensure community stability. Rohan's lawyer, an older man named Haran, had advised him to let them open the valves. You can't win this alone, Haran had said. They have lawyers, money, and government backing. But Rohan had shaken his head. Sometimes the right thing doesn't need a crowd. It just needs someone to stand first. Now that stand had come. By mid-morning, Rohan saw the same black trucks coming down the road. Only this time there were more of them. 2 police cars followed behind, their lights flashing softly. Drones hovered above, recording the scene. Lena came out from the kitchen, worry clear in her eyes. They're back, she said quietly. Rohan nodded. Yes, but we'll not be silent this time. He turned on his small radio transmitter and opened his online live stream again. Within minutes, hundreds of people joined to watch. Many had been following his story since the last broadcast. Messages poured in and encouragement, prayers, and hope. The truck stopped near the gate. The lead officer, the same tall man from before, stepped out. Behind him was a well-dressed woman holding a clipboard, the HOA director herself, Madam Kira. Her tone was calm but firm when she spoke. Mr. Rohan, she said, this is the final notice. We have a court order. You must open the valves or allow our team to do it. Rohan walked up slowly, standing behind his gate. Madam, this land feeds my family. The water they take is not for our crops, but for their new housing project. Why should I let strangers control what belongs to me? Kira sighed. This project helps everyone. You are one man standing in the way of progress. Rohan smiled faintly. Progress without respect is destruction. The officer stepped forward. Sir, please move aside. Don't make this harder. But Rohan didn't move. You can open the valve, he said, but only over my words. And my words are still no. The standoff began. More neighbors arrived, drawn by the noise and the flashing lights. Some stood beside Rohan holding small signs. Others simply watched, afraid but curious. Cameras from the local news station rolled as Mira, the reporter, began speaking to the crowd. This has become more than a fight over a pipeline, she said. It's about land, rights, and a man who refuses to give up. The HOA workers moved toward the pump house with their equipment. Rohan followed, his camera still streaming. You all see this, he said to the viewers online. This is how power treats those who stand for themselves. Suddenly, a loud metallic bang echoed through the air. One of the workers had tried to cut open the valve housing. Sparks flew. Everyone stepped back. The noise stopped and a tense silence followed. Then Rohan spoke again, his voice calm but full of strength. Stop. This pipeline was built without true permission. If you break my land today, the world will see. Kira looked around, the cameras, the crowd, the drones. Her confidence began to waver. The HOA had planned to finish this quietly, but now the whole town was watching. Lower the tools, she said at last, her voice tight. We'll do this through higher authorities. The workers hesitated but obeyed. The officer frowned. Madam, are you sure? Yes, she said quietly. We can't afford another scene. Rohan stood silently as they packed up their tools and left. The people around him began to cheer softly. Lena came running and hugged him. You did it, she said with relief. They're gone. But Rohan shook his head. Not yet. They'll come again. Only now everyone knows. That evening, news channels all over the region showed Rohan's story. Rancher defends his land, the headlines said. People began to speak out against the HOA's forced projects. Other farmers and homeowners started questioning similar pipelines. Rohan had become a symbol, not by plan but by courage. Mira visited again with her camera crew. You've started something, Rohan, she said. People are calling you the voice of the fields. Rohan laughed softly. I don't want titles. I just want fairness. Still, she said, smiling, you've shown everyone that one voice can make a difference. A week later, something unexpected happened. A government inspection team arrived. Real officials, not HOA workers. They said they had received many reports and complaints. They wanted to check the pipeline's legality. For 3 days, they studied maps, land documents, and environmental records. Rohan helped them, showing every letter, every proof that the pipeline crossed his property without full approval. The inspectors nodded and took notes. Finally, on the 4th day, the senior officer came to Rohan's porch. Mr. Rohan, he said, we've reviewed everything. You were right. The HOA bypassed proper permissions. The pipeline construction here was unlawful. Rohan blinked in surprise. So, what will happen? The section through your ranch will be dismantled, the officer said. And you'll be compensated for the damage. For the first time in months, Rohan smiled freely. He looked at Lena, who was standing beside him with tears in her eyes. We did it, she whispered. We truly did. 2 months later, the land looked different again, peaceful and alive. The pipes were gone and water flowed only where it was meant to, feeding the crops and trees. Rohan rebuilt the fences and painted the old barn. Neighbors came often to help, bringing food and kind words. At night, when the stars shone bright, Rohan would sit on the porch and listen to the sound of the windmill turning. The land felt alive again, free again. Lena would bring him tea and they would sit quietly, watching the horizon glow with the light of the moon. This land always wanted to breathe, Rohan said one night. Now it can, Lena smiled. And you can too. He looked at her, his face calm and proud. I didn't do this alone, he said. The land stood with me. The people stood with me. That's what matters. Months later, the story of Rohan's stand was told far and wide. His video stream had reached millions. Students, workers, and farmers saw him as a symbol of quiet strength. A man who didn't fight with anger but with truth. Even the new HOA board, reformed after the investigation, reached out to him. They wanted his advice on fair land policies. Rohan agreed, but with one condition: respect the soil first, then build your future. And they listened. In time, Rohan's ranch became a meeting place for those who wanted to protect their lands and speak for what was right. The sound of machines was replaced by laughter, the hum of life returning to the earth. On a calm evening, as the sun went down in golden light, Rohan stood at the edge of his field and placed his hand on the soil. It was warm, alive, and full of promise. He smiled to himself and whispered, "You can't silence the land. You can only learn to listen." And as the stars began to appear, the ranch, once threatened, once silent, stood free, strong, and eternal, just like the man who refused to give up.